Davis, and I was actually just pondering this when I was thinking about what would I even talk about to y'all today. Um, and so I've kind of shifted from servant leadership, which I think sometimes can enable savior type mentality, towards more of a identity powered leadership that thinks about where do I come from? Like, who's my community? Geographically, racially, religiously, all these things. And how does that affect how I view the world and then how I want to engage in my work, right? And so there's that part. And then there's, so the skills, there's the values. So do my personal values match up with what my organization is about? And if not, am I willing to fight to expand what they think their values are? Or is it time for me to go? And that's always something you gotta ask yourself, right? So you got skills, you got values, and then you got like, okay, what are my real life considerations? You know, and like, what are the things I'm willing to compromise? Because there's always gonna have to be a little bit of that. So a constant struggle for me at MCN is like, I know AmeriCorps Vista in itself perpetuates poverty because it's not paying people the amount that they should get paid. And it's tough, and it's not something that people can easily access. It's a privilege in itself to say I'm going to serve a year. You know, some people can't do that. And so am I okay working for a program that is that way? And do I feel like I have enough leverage to be able to expand that? Or is it impossible, and should I think about something else, right? So, you know, that's my path, and I think, you know, nonprofits, every area you're going to go into has its issues. And, you know, nonprofits definitely have theirs. But I think at the end of the day, when I leave work, I feel like I did something to better the world in a way, and that I'm still living up to my even the pillars that Gustavus has, you know, like if you're constantly going back to that and you feel like on a daily basis you're hitting those points, then to me that's kind of what counts, you know, works. So
Yay.
yeah.
So questions for Coco about any of that? She's really
I'm Aaliyah, she, her, I guess. And I think for me, it's my own experiences of being a minority is what really drives me for like social justice and stuff. Because I mean, I don't really like it when people like treat me like crap. So it's kind of like stemming from my own personal experiences. You know, I can't tell like how other races like experience their world, but like my own experiences kind of, you know, I don't like them. So it's kind of, yeah, that's kind of what drives me.
I'm Noelle. I prefer female gender pronouns. I think what brought me here would be my own personal experiences throughout life, and I think a big part of that is speech and being able to speak up for issues that I've been through and other people have also.
I'm Alethea. Female gender pronouns are cool. For me, what radicalized me, I guess, is, again, I'm a minority, so, and I'm a first generation immigrant here as well, so a lot of those experiences have shaped my view on life, I suppose. And also, it's really important for me to be able to advocate for people who, and fight for people who can't do it themselves, so.
Cool. Florence, for me, I think like community-wise and like learning these perspectives of like cultures, and that's it.
I'm Kamaria. He, she, I mean she, her, female gender pronouns. I don't know, I think like for me just growing up as an African American community, I think it's important that like I realize the issues that affect my community and see how it has like a global impact and how it affects other parts of the world. And I think that's just one thing that I'm really passionate about. It's just like helping my people and just like really uplifting them and doing better.
You want to share?
Sure,
Yeah.
Amy. Say he, no, say she or the. No. No, female programs. Actually, it's from my family. My parents were very active working for civil rights decades ago, and that's been instilled in me, and I think that theater is a unique way of being able to address injustice, and so I can put those two passions together.
Cool. Well, I'll share. So I'm Coco, as you know, and I'd say what radicalizes me is actually coming to Davis and interacting with other students who became friends, became partners, became all these different things to me, and really learning about their experiences in their lives and how then that matches up with my experience. And so a lot of what brought me to social justice was actually immigration status. Having come from Italy to this country, but benefiting from dual citizenship, I was a student alongside a lot of undocumented folks, and it wasn't right. They had been in this country longer than I had, and didn't have any rights, and that was what kind of brought me into the work, and that's why I'm here now. And obviously, then it becomes, you start seeing connections between all different types of movements, and you realize it's all really one big movement towards human dignity. And once you get to that point, then social justice makes sense on a really broader level. So, but that was my entry point.
So for our historical purposes, we're gonna ask our guests to tell sort of the story of how you got involved with I Am We Are specifically, and maybe one or two moments of your I Am We Are experience that are particularly memorable.
Okay.
And then how that took you to your next place. And then whatever you would like to do with us.
All right, sounds good. So I got involved with I knew about I Am We Are, so I worked in the D Center my first year. And Virgil, of course, he used to be Pearl, so honest, and he was definitely trying to like get people involved and whatever. And I was like, my first year I was figuring out a lot out. Like I was coming out, I was trying to figure out where I fit on campus, all this stuff. And so I was like, I can't do I Am We Are right now. Like I gotta focus. And then actually sophomore year, Building Bridges was about immigration. And that's what it was. At the end of the day, I Am We Are always does a show for Building Bridges. Love Building Bridges. I thought, it's kind of too late for me to be involved with the committee, so let me try this other pathway. And so I got involved for that show specifically, and then I was hooked for the rest of the time. And obviously, E Pluribus was huge, hugely impactful for me my first year. But also intimidating. I was like, who's this group of people doing all these crazy things that, talking so deep, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So also that was a little intimidating. But so anyway, I got into I Am We Are then, and I think the process of building, all the material for that show ended up being like incredibly impactful. Because a lot of it was drawn from personal experience, as y'all know who are involved, that's how it goes. And so there was this specific thing we did where the scene was a raid. A raid was going to happen on stage. And so it was Dan and Edomai and a few other people, and I was on that one too. And I just remember this was the night before Building Bridges was happening. And so I Am We Are always gets like last dibs that night to practice in the space because it's a huge deal and you're all like, your nerves are going and whatever. And I had to put out the screen, right? And I'm not comfortable in theater. Let me tell you that. What brought me is the social justice piece. If you tell me to get up on a stage, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do any improv. I'm not about that. So I had to let out the screen and I couldn't get it out. I was struggling so much. And I just didn't want to do it. I kept saying, I don't want to do this scene. I can't do it. It's too much. And then finally, we're at rehearsal. We're doing it. And this scream comes out that just like pierced the whole chapel, and it was quiet, you know, there's nobody in there. And that just like broke something for me. And so I remember that being just incredibly meaningful, a meaningful moment. And then Epluribus. And then after that, you know, of course I was involved, and you know, IMWR has its issues around like who's the leader, there is no leader, how do we keep things together, and so that was like the drama, but it was great. But then Epluribus too is like, you know, it's a select cohort of IMWR folks, which, you know, I feel like at the end of the day, everyone usually has a chance to be in it, but it just creates this group that's just jiving together for like a week and really diving into some really intense stuff. And it's so broad, right? It's not just immigration, whatever. So that one was also very intense. So that would have probably been what, my senior year Epluribus? Because junior year I'd gone through some pretty tough depression actually, and so I really worked that stuff out in IMWR Epluribus show that junior year. And Ben Botts and I did a piece where like I was the physical depression and it was like intense, and like, you know, it's kind of cathartic at the end of the day. You know, you're putting all this stuff out, and in the process of creating art and that has impact, right, for young people coming in who are, you know, who are thinking about all this stuff, like who am I going to talk to about this? You know, who are my allies, who are not, you know? So I definitely left some stuff on that stage in a good way, and that's what I think, yeah, those are some key moments I think with IMER. Yeah.
That piece has stuck with me since I was a freshman watching that, and I've never ever forgotten that piece. Back when you had like your big curly hair and it was just like,
Yeah.
it just took Ben over. I've never forgotten that image. So it was very impactful for me. I just think you should know that.
That's really nice. Thank you so much. It was definitely, I was living it, you know, so it's cool to hear that it had impact. Yeah, so that's kind of how I kind of came to IMWR, and unfortunately, you know, as things go for Dusties, you get really busy and you overcommit yourself, and so that kind of happened to me too. I was Building Bridges co-chair, so I had to kind of withdraw from IMWR a little bit and stay involved where I could. But I'm definitely happy that now, even after graduation, we're still connected, and I'm really happy to be here for that. So, yeah. So I guess then moving into more of like the transition. So, you know, senior year happens, spring, you're freaking out. What am I gonna do? I don't want to do corporate. You know, I don't know if I want to go to grad school right away. What am I gonna do? So, and definitely like, how do I retain my focus around social justice? And it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. You have to like consider a lot of things, because it's not just like, you're not gonna live off social justice. You gotta make some money. You gotta pay rent, and you gotta buy food. You gotta survive, right? And also, self-care is an important thing. So if you have a little extra change to go do what you gotta do, that's a good thing. And so what I ended up doing is I got involved with national service, actually. I did AmeriCorps, which is basically Peace Corps but national. And the first year I did it, I decided I was going to do direct service. And so I got placed at Bethune Community School, which is in North Minneapolis. Inner city school, you know, mainly like 98% African American, 99% homeless or highly mobile. So definitely a lot of stuff going on there, and a really good opportunity to all of a sudden have like all these articles I read in social inequality class, or all this stuff. It comes off the page. It's not a statistic anymore. There's a person to that story, right? So I did that for a year, and I was with little kids, pre-K. It wasn't my thing. I'm gonna be honest. I like hated the day-to-day, kind of like, let's talk about your ABCs kind of thing. But when you have the social justice framework that you're bringing to the work, all of a sudden you're starting to scan not just your everyday, like what's happening in the classroom on the micro level, but you're also starting to see like, what is the system that we're in, right? The education system, and how many layers of decision makers are there, and how does that then affect the actual people who count, which are the little kids in the classroom. So when you bring that to a space, then you start seeing like, okay, that's kind of messed up. Okay, they're not actually even talking about race, and somehow, desegregation happened at some point, and yet there are no white kids in the school, so what's going on with that? Teachers are white, students are not, what's with that? So you're starting to ask all these questions. And all that to say that no matter where you end up, if social justice is here or here, you're gonna be able to apply that. It's just a matter of how much bullshit you're willing to deal with in the workplace, to be honest. So after that year, I said, okay, this was really intense. I have a whole new respect for educators, but I can't do this. It is not like really harnessing my skill set, and that's the other thing I would say is you need to figure out what are your strengths, where are your skills, and how do you use that appropriately. And so I didn't feel like that was the place for me. But I like service. I like the idea of getting a little taste of what it means to not be able to pay for food, okay? You're making less than $12,000 a year on AmeriCorps, right? So, and at the same time to distinguish like situational poverty versus generational is definitely important, of course. So I was like, let me do more service. So I decided to go with AmeriCorps Vista, which is indirect, right? So it's more of that, the stuff you'll do here when you're involved in student organizations, the behind the scenes, let me coordinate, what's my strategy for raising awareness on this cause or whatever. And so that's how I got involved with Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. And I'm thinking, oh, nonprofits, it's gonna be awesome. They're all social justice minded. They know exactly what they're talking about. It's gonna be great. And I'm not saying it's not, and like definitely corporate's worse, in my opinion. I'm gonna go off the record on that on the video, but so I get involved in nonprofits, and what you find is what? The social inequalities and inequities that you find in society based on class, race, gender, sexuality, all that stuff is reflected in the nonprofit sector, right? And so what you're gonna get is nonprofit organizations that are white-led, majority culture, predominantly white, that kind of thing, highly resourced, very large, high capacity, who have a team of grant writers who can get funding, and got a department doing this and a department doing that, and so sucking resources. But then what you have is the leadership and decision makers are so disconnected from the communities that you're trying to work with. And then you get that savior mentality. I've never seen so much of it, okay? And so solutions are so disconnected from like what the community actually wants and knows that they need that it doesn't work, right? But they get all the funding. And then you got on the flip side, you got community-based organizations that are, in racial justice POC led or queer led or whatever it is that you're looking at. And so the constituency affected is the leader of the organization that oftentimes does not have access, both in terms of financially, but social capital, don't have those connections and networks, and that's how the world works. It's who you know and who knows you. And so they're struggling, but the community is with them, is engaged with them, knows what they want, is telling them what they want, is part of it, and they don't have the resources. So, knowing that that's the landscape, and then you got foundations, which is a whole other issue, because they have funding priorities that are crazy, and, very restricted, like, we'll give you $10,000, but you can only pay for this, this, and this, and like, they basically control social movements, is my thought, but so all this to say that once I was positioned at MCN, even though an AmeriCorps Vista member, which is like literally the lowest tier that you can be in an organization, right? I was like, what is MCN's role in the nonprofit sector? And what are the levers that I can switch here to redirect resources and redirect some visibility towards things that actually matter, and to actually expose inequities in society and not keep kind of sustaining the status quo, right? And that's huge. And it's a system in itself, so it's not like one person is going to change it. But then what you start doing is figuring out who are your allies in the organization, who's kind of on the